This meeting of the Hopkinton Select Board to order on today, Monday, April 24, 2023. And in attendance tonight for the board, Jeff Donahoe, Thomas LaPalma, Stephen Whitley, and myself, Ken Tround. Sabrina Dunlop is traveling, so she will be unable to join us tonight. So Jeff, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Neil, do you have any points of pride?
Sure, I just want to sort of comment, we're at the point where we're recruiting and getting committee members, and it's always amazing what a good response we get, and the number of volunteers we have who are willing to put in a lot of time in the town meeting. And our town meeting survey went out, dodging all the other surveys that we have going on in town, timing wise, and I think we're up to 39 just this afternoon. So we're actually really showing. So those are the two things.
Okay, does anybody else have anything? I have a number of them. First, I'd just like to recognize our robotics club, Osram. They, I guess, qualified for the World Championships in Houston, and they placed 88 out of 619. So I thought that was great. Also like to thank everybody who was involved in the roadside cleanup, and note that this Wednesday at 6:30 at the library, there's a button-up workshop being presented by New Hampshire Saves, and the select board is among the groups that are co-sponsoring it. With that, I'll seek a motion for the approval of the consent agenda for April 24th.
So moved.
Making any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I'll seek a motion for approval of the public meeting minutes of April 10, 2023.
So moved.
Second, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And similarly, I'll seek a motion for approval of the non-public meeting minutes of April 10, 2023. Note they're not sealed.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, with that, Leanne, I believe you're.
Hi.
You want to come up here to this table, please?
Run it. Ta-da. Thanks for inviting me here. I did watch your last meeting where you talked about this, so I've got lots of things to tell you because you guys had lots of questions. So the first was I did get from a little copy of what the trust fund says, just so you know. And do you want me to read it? Did you guys all get this since then? Okay, so good. So we fall into this, absolutely. It doesn't say anything about just has to be on town property, it's my understanding, it looks like. For the town of Hopkinton, music for the summer band, for the purpose of providing summer band concerts in the town of Hopkinton, so for the general public to enjoy. And that trust was in 2017, it's my understanding. 2018, David and Jim came to my attention, and they came for my help to ask. They said, look, there's money for town concerts. We'd love to do this. Nobody seems to be stepping forward. Would you help us do this? And I, of course, said yes. So that was 2018 was our first town band concerts, end of the summer concerts. At the time, we just kind of all did this verbally. There was nothing written. There's nothing in the trust that says how to, or in the town that says how we apply. So we applied afterwards, mostly because at the time we had nowhere to have rainouts. So we didn't know exactly what we were going to be, and our contracts all said if we were rained out, we didn't pay our contracts. Okay, they didn't play, so they didn't get paid. So that's why we always did it afterwards. So 2018, 2019, 2020 all went smoothly. 2021 was COVID. We don't know what happened. We just had a change of, there were lots of people doing it. I wasn't, the past 2 years, 21 and 22, I wasn't around a lot. I had a sick family. So 2 summers in a row, so I wasn't around. So somebody else was doing it, and we just missed 2021. It was just a flat out, we forgot to put it in. We're not asking for that money back, we just said it was our fault. 2022 came around at the end of December. We were going over our budget. And I asked, did anybody put in we've always decided that, you were there when we decided this. We kind of decided that we'd ask for half of the money and we'd raise the other half of the money. We've been a lot of different entities between them, but it's always been kind of like, when we first started, it was just Explore Kentucky, which was just the businesses downtown. Then we started the chamber, hoping that a bunch of businesses in town would be really excited about joining the chamber. But we've kind of now changed our entity. We are still going under the Chamber of Commerce. We are now a DBA. Paperwork is in the works. We just changed a little bit in the membership. So now there's 5 members and anyway, you can ask me if you want to know more about how it all, but we're going to become Discover Kentucky. And the purpose for that is that a lot of the businesses in town didn't really seem like they wanted to participate as much. And the people that did want to participate and did basically all the work, not all the work wherever you are. I'm sure there were other people who helped, but the majority of us were the business owners right in Kentucky. And instead of trying to pedal backwards and try to get other big businesses in town to help us out, we decided it'd just be easier to change us to more of a chamber that was just Kentucky and the downtown businesses. That being said, we are accepting sponsorships. This is help for everybody who's listening out there. I don't know where the camera is, but we do need money. We'd love to have sponsorships for these. Hi, we really need sponsorships. It's a great way to advertise your business. You'll get a banner at all the concerts. So if you want to do some advertising for your business instead of just joining the chamber, this is a great way to do it. So back to history, 2022, we did send in that request. That request was sent at the end of December. I forgot to put stamps on it the first time. So Neil probably didn't get it till the beginning of January. I don't know why it's just now being presented. I'm just sure it's just an oversight on everybody's part. They all were paid. We decided to do half. At the very beginning, just because we wanted this money to go on into forever. That word, anybody?
Perpetuity.
Thank you, that word. We wanted it to go on forever. So, I also look and hear that it doesn't say anything about just using the could be used the principal and the income. So again, that was just us deciding if the trust committee or who you guys want to make a more formal process. We'd love to have that. We'd love to have we're willing to work with you. We were the first ones to help get the alcohol licensing in the thing. So, and again, we love working with you guys. So we'd love to keep going in perpetuity, word I can't say. I do have the information. We have already got the gazebo on set. We're working on the liquor license next. So that'll come next. And we do have all the bands lined up. If anybody wants to know, on 8/3, they're every Thursdays from 6 to 8, excuse me. On 8/3, it's Peabody's Coltrane. On 8/10, it's Nick's other band. On 8/17, it's Dressed for the Occasion. On 8/24, it's April Cushman, who won, what is it, New England Entertainer of the Year. And 8/31, it's Lugnuts. And on 9/7, it's Senny Hunt. All of these bands are New Hampshire associated. So we're very happy and proud to be have New Hampshire bands at our concerts. Questions?
What's the total cost of those bands?
What's the total cost of the whole of these bands? The total cost of those bands will be $5,800. If we stick with the half like we did last time, it'll be $2,900. We have increased when we started, we had a much smaller budget, but we were also getting bands that were much smaller and much more. Let's go with much smaller. It does cost us way more than this to put on these. We don't make any money on anything. We are a nonprofit. So, I mean, this is just, we're just asking for bands. We're not asking for any of the other costs. This year, once again, we'll have if everything goes well, we'll have the beer garden, and we're going to have some food trucks this year too. So we're really excited about it. We're hoping you guys are too. We do kind of not expect. We plan on this money, the half the money, because this is what this was started for, is for band concerts in the town of Hopkinton. So we're hoping that we do fall into this and you will vote positively.
You were on listening last time. You know, the issue is not the fact that you did concerts, but the fact that you requested reimbursement without ever discussing it.
I think you're incorrect, because we have done this after, we got paid after and requested after 2018, 2019, 2020. We did skip 2021 and 2022. So I don't think we did anything different than what's been done in the past. Okay, well, it's too bad that
If someone sent me an invoice 4 months after the fact for something they didn't ask for approval for first, I'd say no.
Okay, well, I'm going to say that we did ask for it, because this was set up and this was going on for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This will be our 6th year. So I can appreciate it. If we'd like to set up something in the future, I would love to put this forward in the future.
You're going to need to submit a request for 2023 if you want to get any.
Okay, and I think we should make sure that that is in how it's set up, though, because I don't feel like I did anything incorrectly or anything that we didn't do in years past.
Is that your recollection, Neil?
I'm pretty sure we had a conversation, at least back when you started, in advance of doing the concerts. I think that I will say that
and
I would say the invoices always come in after.
Invoices always come in after.
And then was it approved in advance? Is my question.
I think it was known this was happening and would come out of there those years. And then I think maybe some of it is because there wasn't anything
because that, and again, that was our fault.
Yeah, so I'm not sure we were anticipating it for 2022 because 2021.
Right. I apologize for that.
So,
but I still think we did it within how it was done in the past. I will put that out there.
I mean, I was on the board for, I think, 1 or 2 of these, and I don't honestly remember the timing to comment on that. So it may have been before, it may have been after. I don't recall.
I was new on the board.
I do have all the dates they were paid in the past. And 2022, it was paid December 31st. Excuse me, that's not true. Then 2020, it was invoiced on 12. So we were invoiced and paid in 2020 was December 4th. 2019 was October 15th, and 8/20/18. So that's October in 2018.
I think 2020, if I remember right, the trustees hadn't acted, so we ended up paying it and getting reimbursed. So like it was probably done on the 31st.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't think we got paid until the following year. We invoiced on that, but didn't get paid till.
I mean, what I said last time, I think is still true now, that I think they qualify under the terms of the trust. And we don't have anything formal requiring submission ahead of time. And I didn't realize the part about rainouts and not asking for it, which is good to know. So, I mean, I think my position is that we ought to pay them what they're requesting and think about putting something in writing about what to do with these going forward. And the other concern, which is unrelated to timing, is we probably ought to think about how much we dip into the trust, because if this is the rate that we're going to be going, there's not going to be much left.
What are,
Fiscally, I don't think we should touch the principal. I know we're allowed to,
Yeah,
but I don't think that we should.
I think that's something we should talk about.
I'll let the chamber has already lined up these concerts for this summer. I don't think we can delay very long in terms of talking about it, if we're willing to cover 50% or not.
Yeah, it's true.
Neil, where this book value you provided us of 27,000 is December 31. Do you have any more current numbers?
Don't. Get those from the trustees of trust funds. But I don't think it's substantially different.
So if we pay this, we'll have $200,000 to $200 over the 25,000 available.
Thomas, do you have any thoughts?
I was just wondering, do you know how much it makes per year? Is this something where you could say, we know that the budget's going to be 2,000, we're making $2,000 a year or something? I mean, we obviously been making money because there's more than what was put into it, and it's been 6 years now. So it's obviously making enough money to, depending on what, is it something where you could say, we're putting this much towards this or this? And who's in charge of that? You guys or the trust?
Trustees.
What?
Trustees of the trust funds.
Okay.
Looks like the income was about 1,100 in 2022.
Neil, would you have any idea what it's invested in? Is it just bonds or is it stocks?
It's they have the different investments, but they're very conservative investments, which they have to. And you know who those stocks.
If you, anybody good at math here? I wish my husband was here. If you spent, let's just,
It's 6.5% gains on the first amount, but the problem is that we can't spend just the interest because we have to also increase the principal. Because like you have to, otherwise the amount of money will effectively go down over time. But
right,
It's essentially 4%.
But-
And the income on the principal balance is 4%.
yeah, so
I-
I think it's like, we could come up with like a number of how much we think we could spend every year. That'd probably be in like the $1,000 range, 800 to 1,000. That's like a gut. But I think that part is more, deserves more discussion. And I
Yeah.
agree with everyone that I think that we need like a more written down, this is how we're going to administer it, which would include how much we think we can spend every year, probably looking at how much we got from last year. But and I generally agree with Stephen about the 2022 year. So yeah, that's
I'm willing to do whatever. So just let me know what I need to fill out and how we should move forward. And I think somebody definitely needs to talk about, this is just my opinion, how you want to go forward with this $25,000 in the trust, if you, which is why we did have to begin with, because we wanted the money to last for a long time. We do want it to last for a long time, but do we need it to last forever? Or do we need whatever? I guess that's something that needs to discuss, because I don't think this was intended to be money that lasts forever. I think it was just intended to have extra music in the town of Hopkinton, summer band concerts, more summer band concerts in the town of Hopkinton.
So it sounds like the first thing we want to do
Yeah.
is decide on, do we want to reimburse $2,475 for last year's 50% of the cost? And then what kind of process do we want to establish going forward? So does anybody want to make a motion with regards to last year's costs?
I'll make that motion for last year's costs of $2,475.
We'll have a second.
I'll second it.
In discussion. Okay, then I'll call for a vote. We'll go.
Yes.
Yes.
No. I'm going to say reluctantly, I'm going to say yes. And I think we need to have a process going forward. I guess I'd ask that you and Neil just put your heads together and develop some kind of a process. And
I'll bring a policy. It's on the list to get done.
okay, great.
The next.
And just bear in mind that we would like to have this fund last as long as possible.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think this is a great thing, and I think it'd be lovely if we could keep going forever, because it's really fun. I think the community the community who shows up really seems to enjoy it. So
When are your first concerts this year?
first concert is it's always the end of the summer, so it's August 3rd, which is a Thursday.
When do you sign the agreements with the artists? Have you already done that?
I've already got all the agreements so far I've already got all the bands lined up, all signed except for one, but I have an email, which I take that as they're coming. I've already got the gazebo form filled out, and now we have to start working on the, is there a new buskers form?
So anyway,
Buskers form somewhere?
Through the, yeah, it's not new, it's been on.
oh, the Hawkers program.
Hawkers?
No, must be.
Buskers, Hawkers, I don't know. We haven't filled that one up before, so I'll need help with that. And then I'll need the alcohol permit, because it's not on the website. So
The food trucks have to be permitted.
They need the police.
Yes, must be.
I'll answer that. Police is done.
Hawkers, buskers.
So, we do have an ordinance which is a Hawkers permit,
Okay,
which is administered by the police department.
yeah. And all the trucks that come in have to follow they're licensed and they get their own insurance, and they follow all the food processes. So that's good. That's what's nice about trucks. So. Well, I'm excited. Thank you. Okay, we'll see you guys in August.
I'm sure.
On a
before then.
sponsor.
Next item under whole business, Thomas, I believe you wanted to present a option.
Why does everyone think it was me?
Oh, it was.
I didn't put this together. My process of
I
elimination.
heard greedy.
You're gonna put me in a really bad position.
This is greedy. For the record, this is greedy's idea.
And she sent it to Thomas, who sent it to me.
I'm just a middleman. Okay, so this is just an idea that I think is worth talking through. I figured this is a good place to start the conversation as to whether this is a good idea or a bad idea. This could very well be a bad idea. If this is a good idea, then this is the starting point, which would then go into lots of discussion and planning with waste reduction committee, transfer station, everyone involved in the green bag program. So just a starting point. But effectively thinking through what we were talking about last time and how the conversation with green bag has been going, looking for an option that hasn't been tried before that would increase green bag usage as much as possible with making as little structural change as possible. So that's starting. So yeah, if you go to the next slide. So just as a recap, the main purpose of the green bag program, the pay by bag program, is to decrease the amount of waste being generated and taken to the transfer station. By using the pay by bag program, we're increasing the individual price of your waste. So you have to buy bags. If you use more waste, then you pay more. If you use less waste, you pay less. This incentivizes recycling, incentivizes less waste, incentivizes composting. It does all these things, but the primary thing is reducing waste, and this has all the follow-on effects of all the other good things. So looking at the current situation, these are the best numbers I could get. These numbers collaborate. These numbers follow very well with the numbers that were found in the 2015 select committee that looked at this, and they're rough because of all the reasons that we operate, like because of Webster, because only certain people use transportation, certain people use curbside pickup, and we have multiple curbside pickup people. It's extremely hard to narrow down these numbers. For the current situations, there's very little use of the pay by bag system. We have about 11% of residents use the pay by bag system. From what I can tell, only about there's about 62%, definitely more than 50%, but close to 62% of the town uses curbside pickup of some form. And so that means that there's, well, and also because there is some curbside pickup green bags, we don't actually know how many people that are going to the transfer station are using, what percentage breakdown of the people at the transfer station are using. It basically is very complicated to try to figure this out. We know it's extremely hard to enforce at the transport station. It was initially tried. It broke down for many reasons. But we have tried to do enforcement of transportation. Most of the town, the majority of town does use commercial curbside pickup. The bags right now aren't correctly priced. They don't match what's seen in other municipalities. It doesn't really even cover the cost of transferring the waste. It's just kind of an additional fee that's there. And from what I can tell, not many people are happy with the current system. So looking at all the stakeholders, these are kind of the breakdown of everyone who's involved. And so looking at a solution, trying to make it either the same for all these people or better. Certainly not try to not make it worse for anybody. But there's the transport station users. So all the people who are currently taking their trash directly to the transport station, they're supposed to use green bags. Most of them don't. There's curbside users who, because it's just a commercial entity and because a decent portion of the curbside pickup doesn't actually go to our transfer station, they can use whatever they want and they can pay whatever they want. There's commercial haulers who are currently transporting more than 50% of our waste. There's the transfer station employees who are theoretically responsible for enforcing the system, which is right now currently difficult for them. There's the town administration, which I would say is more or less us, who were responsible for administrating the program, administrating the program, all the stickers, the bags, all those things. Then there's also Webster, who's its own complete thing. So looking at a potential idea, which again, could be a good idea, could be a horrible idea, but structurally what we could do is increase the price of bag from the current 75 cents. And just for right now, I'm just looking at what like the normal, I think it's 13-gallon bag. Just looking at that for price wise, just to keep it simpler, increase the price of the bag from 75 cents to $1.50. For reference, Concord's $1.25, but so generally in that range. And then the only other change is we would pay commercial haulers that bring their trash, that bring green bags. We pay them somewhere between $100 a ton to $200 a ton for their loads of green bags at the transfer station. So the only thing that we would need to change is increasing the price of bags. And then instead of charging commercial haulers who are bringing their waste, if they're bringing loads of green bags, we would pay them money instead. So it's the only structural change. So looking at kind of how how this would change things. Because right now we're only seeing about 11% of green bag usage, and curbside pickup is close to 60%. It would be, if everyone who is doing commercial pickup started using green bags, it'd be a significant increase of green bag usage. So for the transfer station users, there would effectively be no change. There's no real, and I think there's still an open question of what we do for enforcement of people who are going to the transfer station, but effectively it'd be no different than what they're doing now. For the curbside user, ideally we're pricing the price of the green bags to be basically the exact same for what they're paying for curbside pickup. So if a current green bag, for a current user of curbside pickup, if they're paying roughly $85 a quarter, and they're producing about an average of 5 bags a week of waste, we would price the bags so that if you're using those 5 bags, our price of bags would equal roughly that same $85 that they're spending every quarter. So for a curbside user, there would be no difference in cost. There'd be an advantage where they wouldn't have to do billing anymore, because they wouldn't actually be paying, they wouldn't have to work out, negotiate contracts, and then pay quarterly or monthly to the haulers. They could just buy their green bags. And if they wanted to, they could decrease their individual costs by decreasing waste, which is the entire purpose of the green bag program in the first place. For the commercial haulers, ideally it would simplify billing, because they would no longer have to worry about signing up new customers or having to track down people who aren't paying. They would just pick up green bags from the same people they're picking up from now. And ideally it would also expand their customer base, because if other people wanted to start using curbside pickup, they could just also buy green bags. We definitely have to put more thought into how that system would expand and where we'd start and all that stuff. But for the commercial hauler, ideally it's either no different or better, but not worse. For the transfer station, it's better because this is something that they're already doing. They already have to weigh the trucks coming in to dump their loads. And they already have to interface in some billing method. They have to, right now they're just charging them. They would do the same thing they're doing, except instead of charging them money, they would be paying them. For the town administration, we would have to do work, like we'd have to put in work in terms of organizing it, making sure that the different curbside pickup users are coordinated, or how it expands, or like we definitely wouldn't want to just like explode this usage everywhere and just say like, okay, tomorrow you can just start throwing your bags on the sidewalk. So we have to put some effort in there, but ideally it would also increase the pay by bag use. And then there's also an advantage here in terms of Webster, because theoretically, if Webster wanted to start using the pay by bag program, they could do it without any change or vote on their side. They could just start buying green bags. And if the commercial haulers were also operating in Webster, they could do that. So that's generally the structure. In terms of potential, again, if this is a bad idea, then the next step could just be never talk about it again. If this a reasonable idea, then potential next steps would be to talk to the transfer station and also the waste reduction committee about implementation concerns and how it actually implement it. I'm kind of using MT Trash as like when I talk about haulers, I just kind of use their name because it's an easy one. They're in town. I've been talking with Jesse kind of about their usage and this stuff. And the morals are here, which is great. So if we have any questions, we can ask them. But in the conversations with them in the past, I'd say open to the idea, but also, I mean, this is something that would have to be worked out alongside the commercial haulers. This is not something we can just like do. We'd have to make sure that they would want to actively engage in it and participate in it. And then after that, we would basically just change the ordinance to allow us to increase the price of bags and pay the haulers. And then we'd have to do a lot of communication with the community about the changes. So we'd probably want to work with the haulers to find, are there kind of like long stretches of road where they have a lot of customers currently, and then communicate with those with kind of that entire route to say, hey, this change is happening. Start using green bags. This is where we buy them. I can use them. This is the day the pickup might happen, and expand it there. And then if it works in a small area, expand to a larger area and go from there. And then we'd also have to figure out what actually happens at the transfer station. This is the change that happens on the commercial hauler side. This doesn't address anything about compliance or enforcement at the actual transfer station. So that's kind of its own thing that does need to figure out This doesn't solve that, but it also doesn't really change any of the issues there. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
That's all.
That's all. I mean, it's a simple change with a lot of complication. So, yeah.
Neil, if you could go back to the prior slide, please. Okay, the curbside user, somebody who's getting it now, who's putting their rubbish in green bags and it's picked up, they're still paying the fee right now.
Yes.
And under this proposal, they're not going to be paying a fee.
That would be the idea. We would work with the haulers to try to price that out and make sure that that works out. But that would be the idea, is that we would price the bags such that the haulers are getting the same revenue from the same customer base and the user is paying the same amount of money that they are now for the same service.
And complicating it though is in terms of the town budget, would we be getting the same amount of revenue at the end of the day? Or would the net cost of running the transfer station be the same?
This should be the exact same in terms of revenue and costs to the administration. There should be no change. There should be no change. If anything, I think the revenue would increase because we have less people not using the green bags. Because right now, if you're not using the green bags and you're taking your trash to the dump, then we are covering that cost. The more people that use the green bags, if the green bag covers the entire cost of the system, then that cost to the town decreases.
I'm not sure I agree with you, but there's a lot to it. And
Yeah, and how that pricing works and making sure it works for both the users and the commercial haulers, like that would probably be the most important thing, making sure we price the bags correctly.
And what about when this study was done, 8 years ago or whatever? One of the things lacking was analysis regarding commercial and industrial customers.
Yes.
How do they fit in?
This would, again, this is the base of the idea, so I don't have an answer to that, but this does not immediately address a commercial, a commercial user. I would note that when this was done in 2015, their recommendation was curbside pickup. And it stalled out because there was, when they looked at quoting to get someone to actually come in and do curbside pickup, it was much too expensive.
So commercial trash pays a tipping fee. So it's
a net plus.
that would really change.
So it's your position.
Greenie's position.
This is, you may know a little bit about it. Maybe you can answer my questions. I've already answered. You believe that this approach will generate enough money for us to pay the haulers and pay to dispose of the trash. So doubling the cost of disposal.
If we price the bag correctly, which would be somewhere in the $1.50, based on very rough estimates, like we really got to nail down the numbers to price it correctly. It will cover the cost of the haulers. It should match the exact revenue that they're getting now. And it should cover the cost of the tipping, and it should cover the cost of the actual physical green bag. So it should be, if we price it correctly, it should be in the range of $1.50 a bag. It should be a net. Should. You think that?
I don't, do we ever break down how many bags we sell with small horses?
I do. I don't have that.
It doesn't have to just be small. It could also be large bags. We'd have to increase the cost of the large bag too.
I agree, we need to increase the cost of bags. I don't think that's up for how much is. I just don't know that subsidizing paying them to pick up trash is just in the best interest of the town. So
I don't think we'd be subsidizing it. It doesn't,
we're paying them to pick up trash as long as it's in a green bag.
right, but the user is buying the bag to pay for that. So the user is paying, which is the same thing that they're doing now and the same thing that we're doing. I wouldn't call it a subsidy. If there's no tax,
Becoming the biggest customer then.
we're already. It's all the same. The users are the town.
We are the town, we're not the residents.
The residents are the town.
I agree with that.
If there's no change,
The board of selectmen.
if there's no change in tax revenue or cost, then there is no something. Well, yeah.
What, so I don't remember the operating agreement for the transfer station. Is that something we can amend or do we need to work with Webster to do that?
It's ordinance in both towns.
Okay, so we would both have to adopt the changes, or could we do it and then put them into effect and then?
Actually, this probably comes out of the pay by bag ordinance, which you have full control,
Okay,
versus the transfer station ordinance, which is a joint.
okay. And if this were to succeed and more people wanted to do curbside pickup, how would that factor into the cost of the bag and then making sure the haulers are made whole?
Yeah, so I think that's a conversation with the haulers. And the morals are here, so we can ask them, but in the conversations that I've had, it's been made clear that there is capacity to cover the entire town.
Okay.
So if everyone saw this and started to want to use it, there's capacity there to achieve.
Right, but capacity is one thing and cost to do it is maybe another. That's, I think, what.
Yeah, so we'd have to work with them to make sure before we jumped and said like, okay, now we're gonna open this up to the whole town.
Right, so they have to hire, another truck and more people.
We would want to make sure we price the bag so that.
Yeah, the bag price would have to go up, obviously, to cover all that cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting idea, Thomas.
I'm going to ask the public later.
Okay.
We've heard that there are haulers that just take the trash out of town. Now, if we implement the proposal like this, and there's going to be more trash brought to our transfer station, wouldn't that be increasing our costs significantly?
So it would, but we would also be generating more revenue to pay for that cost from the greenbacks. A portion of the greenback cost goes to covering the transfer cost. So we would be paying more to transfer out the waste, but we would also be generating more revenue from the greenback program to pay for that exact same increase. And again, we'd have to make sure that we would look at the price for, let's say this covered the entire town, what would the price per ton be? And then make sure that price is incorporated into the greenback.
I'll just say it's an interesting idea at this point.
And if other haulers wanted to then come into town and take advantage of this, I mean, I don't know how we could differentiate and treat them differently.
Yeah, so I think that, again, the next step would be to figure out those problems and have conversations with everybody involved to figure it out. So right now there's effectively 2 large haulers and I think a third smaller hauler. Who I think the smaller hauler doesn't want to be there anymore. I think what we would have to do is talk to the haulers and see if they want to participate or not. And if there was more than one hauler that did want to participate, we'd have to coordinate and there would probably be some sort of permitting thing to say like, let's look at all the routes, let's look at where everyone's operating. And then there could either be a bidding process to see who's coming in at the lowest cost per ton. Or we could say split the coverage and do permits.
Yeah.
But yeah. Again, that's like an open question.
Yeah.
I don't have.
Any other comments before I ask the public for comments? Okay, is anybody from the,
I just want to say that Bonnie did send an email that the Waste Reduction Committee, or she was going to update the recommendations they have made, and they have not done that yet, but will.
okay, thank you for that. Is any member of the public, please come up and state your name.
My name is Debbie Pamela, and I was just wondering where this idea came from. Are other towns doing this already?
So
You had to,
other towns do curbside pickup.
no, I mean, where you're talking about bags paying for
paying for the whole.
Right.
Yeah, so that's usually how it works when you do a curbside bag, pay by bag with a curbside pickup is the cost of the bag pays for the.
So it is working in other towns.
I believe, I mean, every.
I mean, this idea had to come from somewhere. So did it come from, wow, this town, Amherst is doing it. Why don't we do it? Where did this come from?
So from what I know, almost every other town that does pay by bag programs has a unified stream of waste where they can do enforcement. They either have everyone using a transfer station in a single stream where they can enforce it really easily, or they do curbside pickup. And in the curbside pickup side, those towns, they pay for the cost of everything with the cost of bags.
Meredith?
You. Good evening, Meredith Hatfield. I live at 68 Apple Tree Lane. This is just still kind of sinking in.
For us too.
Yeah, so I appreciate the opportunity to just maybe ask some questions. So I think if the town wants to encourage curbside, which it sounds like that's sort of a part of the goal here, then I think the town should issue an RFP and get a hauler that would be available everywhere. Because the way this sounds to me is that if I'm someone who buys green bags and goes to the transfer station as I do today, I would be subsidizing my neighbor who is basically then using a hauling service that I'm paying for through my bag revenue. So that's just confusing to me. So I do think that there could be a subsidy there. My big concern is recycling because I don't believe any of the haulers offer recycling. So if this ends up incentivizing people to use a hauler, then we could end up with a lot more trash because I would make the special trip to the transfer station to recycle, but not everybody would do that. So that's a little bit confusing. And when you say pay the hauler, do you actually mean credit them against their tipping fees? Because, or.
So right now, okay, so there's three things. Kind of just go back to so the first one is, I don't necessarily think that the purpose of this is to incentivize curbside pickup. And I do think that there is a problem here where something needs to be sorted out at the transfer station. So if you were, for example, if you were using the same bags and taking to the transfer station, then that is a problem because you have an increased cost that you're basically paying for the value of pickup when you're not using it. The only thing is right now, no one is doing that. No one is taking green bags to the transfer station. So that is its own issue. And I think.
Or 11, did you say 11% of people were? 11%.
Well, the thing is that 11% also includes people who are doing curbside pickup with green bags. So it's hard to even know if that number is correct. Something needs to happen at the transfer station. I agree with that. That's separate from this. And I think the two need to be solved together. For recycling is interesting because so right now, anyone who's using curbside pickup, you're paying a flat rate per quarter. It does not matter how much waste you use. So there's zero incentive to recycle because once you start using curbside pickup, you're going to pay the same amount per quarter no matter what. So why are you going to recycle at all when you can just throw it on the curb? If you are buying your bags, that adds in the cost of recycling. So if you are using a green bag program and curbside pickup, that does incentivize recycling. It doesn't solve recycling because curbside pickup doesn't currently pick it up, but it also doesn't currently do it anyways. So it moves it from a system where you effectively have a flat rate and you can waste as much as you want and recycle zero to a system where there is a cost to not recycle. Doesn't solve it, but it does make it better. Sorry, I think a third question.
I don't remember the order that I did them in.
I missed something there. Oh, an RFP.
Yeah.
I would agree. I mean, like, if the current haulers can cover everything, great. If they can't, we need to figure that part out. My impression so far is that there's capacity to do the entire town. And so if we can't, we'd have to probably solve that. And I do agree that like you can't have the same price bag going to the transfer station. That isn't fair, but we need to solve how it happens at the transfer station regardless.
Although in Concord, you can take your purple bags to the transfer station and you can also take your recycling, or you could pay by weight, even though you're paying,
Yeah.
paying for the bags and you're paying through your taxes. One thing I would respectfully request is that you reach out to the Northeast Resource Recycling Association. I think that's the name of it, NRRA. They are a membership organization. I don't know if the town's a member, but we should
We are.
be. Yeah, okay, because they are just an amazing resource and they would not only know, sort of what towns in New Hampshire are doing, and especially I think there are a few towns that have the shared transfer station challenge that we do. But it would be really good, I think, to have a presentation from them. And, I feel like this is a little, it's quite creative, but it's to avoid enforcement. And it feels like, doing kind of gymnastics to avoid enforcement, which I don't think we should create something this complicated just to avoid enforcement. And someone will still have to do enforcement because someone will have to.
Yeah. I agree. We need to figure out the transfer station regardless. But even if we do figure out the transfer station, there's still more than 50% of the town that will never have to touch it. I'm more trying to solve that. Yeah, I agree that the transfer station needs to be solved regardless.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks for allowing questions and comments. And I hope that you will work with the Waste Reduction Committee as well.
Okay, anybody else? Please.
Louise Carr, Burnham Interville Road. Do we know how much the haulers charge quarterly the residents?
So I know empty trash rates is 85 if you're using green bags, and I think 115 if you're not using green bags. I don't know all fixed rates, and there's another third that I don't know.
I don't know an exact number, but a few customers have told me all here around 130.
Quarter, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, Mount pays more than that. I think it is about 130 a quarter, or even more, actually. And so, on average, how many bags per household?
So it varies a lot, and I think that we would need better numbers, but the numbers that I'm working with, so there's like federal national averages, and then there's also based on the current haulers, they're looking at about 5 bags per house. It's like a very rough estimate. I don't think that's exact, but.
And because I think just my quick thought is, I think the cost of the bags, if you're gonna do it the way you're thinking of doing it, is gonna be far more than $1.50. And then are you gonna get to the point where you're gonna be too much money? And then people will say, I'm gonna call the other hauler. Because then all you can do is pay quarterly. And not have to buy the green bags.
So the price of the bag should be set, so it should be the same. So they're like, right now, if you're a hauler, there's how much you are paying your tipping fees. And then there's, if that was a concern, it would happen because there'd be a different transfer station that's charging significantly less for their waste. So a different commercial hauler could then take their waste to that and pay significantly less and then charge their customers significantly less. I don't think that scenario really exists. So we'd be pricing it so that the cost to the user should be about the exact same that they're paying, which is the breakdown between the cost of the bag, the cost of the tipping fee, and the cost of the service.
What do we pay, what do they pay now for tipping fees roughly? Is it quarterly or is it?
If it's green bags, they pay 0.
Yeah.
If it's not green bags, I think it's $3 a ton.
Yeah. Okay. That was it. So 20, all right, 5 bags per household per week.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yes.
Pat LaPree, co-chair of the Hopkinton Waste Reduction Committee. Just briefly, I would like to request that we have a copy of your PowerPoint, your proposal.
I sent one over to Bonnie later this afternoon. I think it's up online too.
Oh, okay, great. Just needed to know because hadn't seen it. And I just wanted to update you all that we spoke at the meeting on, I believe it was April 10th, about the draft proposal that the committee had worked on, an overall way to not just what you're addressing. In fact, what you're addressing, I don't believe we have it in our draft proposal, which is great, the commercial hauler issue. But we intend to finalize and bring forth this document for you at our next meeting. So we are in process.
Yeah.
I just wanted you to know that we hadn't forgotten, and it is a good document. It's got it's a 5-year out plan to kind of shore up and make very viable the pay as you throw. So that's pretty much it. Now, you identified 2 commercial haulers and 1 smaller hauler in town. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And have you had conversations with any of these folks yet about their willingness to do this?
So I've had conversations with Empty Trash, and they're in the back, so they have comments and great.
Right.
Again, I didn't want to go much further than what we're seeing.
Right.
I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the general vibe was amenable to the idea, concerned about implementation, rightfully so. I think that there is definitely concern about how things happened when the green bags were first implemented, where it was worked with the haulers and then people immediately losing a ton of customers because of the green bag. So I think that there's concern that a change could have a drastic impact on a customer base, which I think is very valid. So we would want to work with them really closely to make sure that this isn't just like an immediate massive change, and that if things aren't going well, it can be rolled backwards. But the general feeling was amenable to the idea. A lot needs to be worked out, and it could certainly expand if it worked well.
Okay, well, that's great.
I'm saying something, yeah.
So, yeah, I just wanted some more information.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I see Bonnie has her hand up, so Neil, could you bring her over, please? Bonnie, you're up.
Hi. I didn't get anything before the meeting, so this is all new to me. If you sent it, Thomas, I didn't get it. And I feel like I really need to think about this. And also it's really hard on Zoom to understand what's being said. It's very choppy. I missed a lot of the comments in the discussion because I couldn't really hear it. I would like to sit down with Sabrina and/or Thomas and go through this because I have a lot of questions, some about definitions and some about assumptions. But I agree with what Meredith said, that it seems like there's a lot of gymnastics going on just to avoid the E word, enforcement. And if we could just get the bag price right and do enforcement, we wouldn't have to go through all these gymnastics. And yeah, so that's my basic comment. And I would like to talk about it more, but I think I need to see the materials and ask some questions to understand it better first. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Bonnie. Does anybody else in the room like to make any comment? Bob?
Bob LaPree, I live in Highland Ave. I'm sure you recognize me as a person that's been involved with this. The thing about curbside pickup, and I'm had a little trouble figuring out exactly what your point was. The thing about curbside pickup we have now is that people who didn't want to do green bags hired outside haulers, and they don't bring that trash to our transfer station. And that's your capitalism system right there. Okay. If you want to have commercial haulers bringing trash to our transfer station, it has to be 100% green bags. Period. Because then they have their customers have paid their part of it, And if you want to incentivize by saying, you know, for every ton you bring in green bags, we give you $100, that makes sense also because that helps cover the costs of the hauler, and he can also ultimately lower his rates because so if he doesn't have to pay the $80 a ton tipping fee and instead gets 100, then that makes sense for a hauler to do that. And it makes sense to have that be an exclusive, not, so you can't have, I don't want to see us have hybrid haulers, you know, because you don't want to have the commingling. It's just like that thing with the commercial guy bringing in commercial stuff and getting a free ride for the household stuff. That's not right. It undermines the proper economic aspect of what we're trying to do. And raising the prices makes sense, but it was always underpriced. It was always meant as just a subsidy to the actual cost of what we were spending to tip. Back in, I don't know, 2010 or whatever it was like $40 a ton. What is it now? 85, 100, say. And we still have the same price, you know, so it's an even greater subsidy. However, if you wanted to have curbside pickup of green bags, I think that's a great idea. I think people would probably, you know, like the idea. The only one of the drawbacks is that you have the whole recycling thing. That means that they will still have to go recycle. However, those haulers could say, okay, on Tuesday, we're picking up your green bags, and on Thursday, we're picking up your recycling, you know, and then they do other people, you know, other days, take black bags to Turnkey or to Wheelabrator probably. So that would be one way the haulers could do it. And they could charge a fee for that, obviously, but probably not too much because they wouldn't be charged anything to bring it. Of course, then we have the separation aspect. I mean, there's, you know, it's not a simple thing because we separate ourselves now. A single stream is a much more cumbersome and expensive process. And if we tried to do it at our transfer station, it would be prohibitive. So, but there's ways, I know they just have separate bins for separate kinds of recycling, you know, when they're picking up. I mean, I've seen it happen. So that, you know, there are ways to work this. But unfortunately, the elephant in the room is the enforcement aspect. And it's the situation we're having now. Unless you have 100% enforcement of the sticker, we're going to have a losing battle because right now we have a significant number of Hopkinton residents that are scofflaws and bring in non-green bags. So you just sail through and I've already talked about that. We have a pretty high level of non-compliance. And that's something we can do something about. Be not very nice, but you know, people have to understand that it's theft of services if they're not paying for their trash to be taken away by using green bags. I mean, that's what it boils down to. So if we could make that an absolute, I mean, like I said before, just have Webster supply their own orange bags, or somebody has to come in with the proper colored bag, whether it be orange or green. And Webster can give them away free for all I care. But the point being is that you have the opportunity to be a scofflaw because you got a number of people in line with their black bags, whether they have Webster stickers or not. So that's the real issue as far as enforcement is making sure that it really is held. And again, I say, you know, have Webster have their color and we'll have ours. So, but I'd like to see this, you know, pursued. And I think curbside works. We talked about it a lot as even setting up a municipal system like Concord has, you know, you get your purple bags, but it's a city that's picking them up. They're not haulers. And we talked about it, and it just was said, the sense was that, man, that's a lot of infrastructure for this town. And we don't really want to get into expanding our municipal services in such a phenomenal way because we have a capitalist system that will take care of it for us. Okay. And I think that makes sense. I mean, I'm not a real fan of all capitalism, but some of it works very well. And in a situation like this, it makes sense. So I appreciate you working on it, but I think we could probably make it work. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob. Hey, anybody else in the room like to comment?
So my name is Debbie Pomerleau, and we just bought a house here in September and live at 45 Main Street. And the whole pay by bag was new for us. Came to the town hall, got some bags, ran out of bags, and in doing our shopping at Hannaford, whether we go in the store or we order it online and pick up, they never had the bags. So then that meant like planning on being here when the town hall was open or heading in the opposite direction to the grocery store over here to get the bags. And personally, yes, I'm one of those scofflaws. When I went to the dump, to the transfer station, the people were just throwing, not even in bags, just tossing random stuff and what seemed to be commercial workers throwing other trash in there too, which was weird. We also do pay for curbside pickup and we do pay extra for recycling pickup. And we came into this willing to do the pay by bag, but it wasn't convenient. And maybe there are other sources for getting that green bag, but it wasn't an easy thing to do. And I don't know, as far as an incentive, I don't know, but they should be more widely available, or like at the store when it reopens, or I don't know, gas stations. I don't know. I mean, it just wasn't convenient.
Okay, Neil, could you remind us where bags are sold now?
They're at Colonial Village.
Mhm.
They were at the store here.
Before it
At
closed.
some point. They are in Concord, they're at Shaw's, Hannaford's.
Supposed to be Hannaford, but they're never
We have a
there.
contract with them. I can't say they order,
So-
how their ordering is.
How is that happening, that if they're supposed to be
And they're at.
selling it, they don't?
In.
I would agree. I think there's a lot of concerns about the quality of the bags, the location of the bags, the availability of the bags, the enforcement at the transfer station. These are all things that need to be worked on. For sure.
Okay. And I'm just speaking as a first-time resident here and a first-time user of green bags, and working and trying to succeed with this, it hasn't been easy. So,
Welcome to town.
yeah, thank you.
Anybody else in the room? If there's anybody who's on Zoom who would like to speak, please raise your hand now. Guess not. Okay, well, I guess then, oh, please,
You got a couple.
okay.
So I'm a little bit confused.
Why don't you state your name?
Kirk Morrow. The purpose of the green bags was to promote recycling and also keep the tipping costs down, correct?
I would say reduce waste. One of the major ways that we can reduce waste is by increasing recycling, but reduce waste and help pay for the tipping fees.
Okay. A couple things. One, we don't ever hear about the recycling markets and how we might be recycling, but as a town, it's also costing us more money. There's a few items that have come back price-wise in the recycling market. There's a few that it doesn't make sense to. So when it comes to the tipping fees, if we're hauling it in there, we're paying our tipping fees. And I think it's also people think that we're just dumping the dump and that's that. I mean, if you look at the numbers, we paid the town of Hopkinton more than what the green bags generated last year in tipping fees. So one way this could be solved, and I believe the town of Derry used to do this. I don't know if they still currently do. It didn't matter if what color bag, how many bags, every resident, drove over a set of scales. They had an inbound and outbound, and you paid by your weight. And to me, that is the fairest thing to do. If you want to bring a little shopping bag full of your bathroom trash, it's going to cost you 7 cents. If you bring a pickup load, it's going to cost you $30. But everybody paid their fair share. And there was no worrying about if the bags ran out, who had them, who didn't use them, any of that. So I think that's something that should be considered too, because you're still achieving your goal of trying to reduce waste. Because if you want to recycle, you have that opportunity. Put the recycling bins before the scales. Trash then would be weighed and disposed of. With pretty minimal investment, with no enforcement.
Neil, do you have any idea what that kind of a concept could we require Warner residents to do the same? Webster, excuse me.
Well, if that's the way if that was in the transfer station ordinance, yes. Would require changing the ordinance, which requires both boards, but yes.
An interesting concept, thank you.
The issue just from an operational perspective is the exchange of money at the transfer station and the ability of the staff to process 400 vehicles on Saturday.
You're not wrong.
That may keep you
But
working.
even without the scales is a madhouse on Saturdays. So it could get worse, but it also could promote curbside pickup if somebody didn't want to deal with the mess. So
We have to reorganize how, certainly to handle that many people coming and going.
thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Neil, could you bring Linda Kimball up, please?
You should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay. Hi, Linda Kimball, 2688 Hopkinton Road. One of my concerns is by using green bags, nobody talks about this, we are adding more plastic to the environment. So why aren't we looking at something else? I mean, at this point, not many people, I recycle, I compost, I am paying MT Trucking to not use a green bag, so I pay extra. What about that? Last summer you did a whole incentive of using less plastic, and the green bag is just more plastic. That's all I have to say.
Well, thank you for your comments. Okay, last call for anybody in the room? On Zoom? Okay, we'll close this and to be continued.
I guess,
So what's the next?
yeah, that was my
Yeah.
question, is just what do we as the board want to do with this proposal, and where do we go from? I know we're waiting on Waste Production for their comments, and that's sort of a separate but related piece, but
There was that, and then I believe Brian Patno from Northeast
NRA.
Resource Recovery
I
was.
don't think he's really look at pay by bag though. This is kind of, that's something different. But it's sure, it can be part of it, but I would not count on that to solve
These kind of
this issue.
best practices.
Yeah.
do you know if there's anybody else at NRA that might be able to speak more to what we're sort of floating?
I can find out. Some of them worked. And we'll see what their expertise is.
Yeah, I don't know.
Pay by bag's a little different, especially when we're weak.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's gonna come in and tell us how to solve this.
Nobody's gonna come to the board?
I'd certainly like to see Sabrina's map for our next meeting.
Well, I mean, the thing about the map is it needs better. It needs significant follow-up.
You used something to create, come on, Sabrina. Tell us what it was.
Yeah, I can definitely set numbers around, but I mean, the numbers are extremely rough.
Is it possible to get firm enough numbers are firm enough numbers out there? I
So,
guess that's my concern. Is
so
that
I
it
think,
feels very dependent on the data.
so I think to come up with real good numbers, I think that what we would need to do is interact with the actual homes and have a sit down and say, if you were to, if this was to happen, what would you need to see? What numbers of usage would we actually see? And what is the actual cost that you would need per ton to make up for the loss of billing? And that would tell us exactly what the number needs to be. Like, we know how much the bags cost. We know how much the tipping fees, or we know how much the transfer fees. But we don't have a good number of exactly how much of, if this was like a route per day, how much would actually be in that route, and how much per ton do we need to pay to make up for the loss of that $85.
It seems like conceptually, we should be able to figure out a very rough bag price. Because it needs to cover the hauling and the tipping fee. And so it seems like very conceptual to do that, to see if we're even in a ballpark that is feasible to move forward.
What numbers are you looking for, Thomas? Tonnage or bags?
It's actually, I think, users. Because your revenue doesn't depend on how many bags you pick up or how much tons you drop. Your revenue depends on how many users you pick up. So I think that's the problem.
Depends on how much he drops.
Right. And the two sides of this is your profit needs to not drop and the user's cost needs to not increase. So the bag price needs to be right on that line to make sure that those two things don't get affected. And the primary number for that is users per route and weight per user.
You also need tonnage.
Yeah,
In order to get the tipping fee that has to be absorbed by that also.
Yeah, I think like what we want to try to figure out is if you had a route that was relatively packed, like a relatively tight route, how many users are on that route and how much weight are you picking up on that route per week? And then that would give us a pretty good number of what does the payout per ton have to be to offset the revenues from those users.
So for,
Yeah, I mean,
Look at how I
it,
can figure out a number for you.
yeah, I think it's very doable. It's just whether we want to continue on that path. And then I think like the other side of this is we obviously have to figure out something at the transfer station. And I think we need to work with the waste reduction committee to see what are the big concerns here, what are the things we're missing. What are the other issues around recycling and bag availability? Because like we could do this, but if no one can buy that many bags, then that ruins the whole thing. You know, if we say this route's gonna all of a sudden be green bags, and no one can buy green bags.
If we know in advance, we can make sure people have them.
Yeah.
so for a way to proceed, wondering if in 2 weeks we hear from the Waste Reduction Committee on their recommendations, their 5-year plan, and you can try to develop better numbers for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would sound like a next.
Sure.
Fair?
Yeah.
I don't think the Waste Reduction Committee will be in. I could be wrong about that.
What are you saying, Jeff? What's that?
I don't think that the Waste Reduction Committee will be until the end of that.
Right, May 13th? 18th? I can't remember. I just wrote the minutes this morning. I forget what.
I mean, the two things are, we can have, I can work on a better pricing model.
This is
And
draft.
the waste reduction committee can also work on that side of things. And then I also think there's another effect here, which is that if we increase the prices back significantly, we need to figure out how that affects people using the transfer station. Because this kind of just says like, it ignores that whole issue around people using the transfer station, right? We can't have a bag that costs twice as much to pay for curbside pickup that people then have to still use if they're using the transfer station. That needs to get solved. I think the waste reduction committee can incorporate that into.
So it sounds like for our next meeting, you'll try to develop some better numbers. And then in 2 meetings from now, the Waste Reduction Committee will be presenting. Does that sound like a fair approach? Okay. Okay.
Bonnie has her hand up again.
Or Bonnie, go ahead.
Yeah,
Bonnie,
please do meet with Brian Patno. Brian has operated the transfer station. He's the person at NRRA. He has operated the transfer station in Littleton and in Lancaster, and he's done pay as you throw in both of them very successfully. He's the, I think it's the member services manager now at NRRA, and he's excellent. And he already said that I think he's spoken with Sabrina, or at least emailed with her, and is more than happy to talk with you. But please consult him. He can be very, very helpful.
okay, thank you for that. And well,
That is in the pipeline.
Yeah.
okay, great. Okay,
I don't think you can just wait for someone to, I think we have issues beyond what somebody's going to come in and solve.
The answer is still not coming through the door.
It's still, but
Okay.
could be,
Back-
but there's certainly can be helpful things.
Okay.
okay. I will close discussion on this issue and move on to the next item of old business is naming criteria policy first review. So Neil, you want to?
So you have it.
Yeah.
And hopefully you've read it.
So did anybody have any comments about the first draft?
So what this does is basically establishes procedure and some criteria for things that are named or donations that come, such as benches and items, memorial items that are donated.
Thank you all very much.
Well,
Thanks, guys.
so did anybody have any comments about this draft of the naming policy?
And I reviewed it and nothing jumped out at me as needing correction. I thought it was a really good first draft. And I'm looking at it again to see if.
We have to have a public hearing to adopt this or something. Or is this just?
Policy, you don't, just the ordinance.
So
We would post it. And if you're going to vote on it at the next meeting, put that out there so people could have a chance to make comment if they wish.
That sounds like a great idea. Do I need to make a motion for that?
Jeff, I was going to ask for public comment. Well, first I'll ask if anybody else on the board wants. to
Nobody's
say
seen
anything.
it, so they can't make comments. I think public forums at the end.
Okay, so Jeff, you were going
We
to
need a motion or not. If we do, they put it up on the website, and let people come for the next meeting.
Unless there's comment, I'll bring it back. We'll post it, bring it back for vote next meeting.
okay, Meredith had raised her hand before I was overruled, so please.
Thank you. Meredith Hatfield again, 68 Apple Tree Lane. So I was wondering, I've asked before, and maybe the answer is just no, but is there not a way that the public can see what you see that's public before the meeting? Because the only thing that's posted is the agenda, but like we can't see the consent agenda, we can't see the minutes that you're voting on, and then we can't see any of the items that are before you. So I was just wondering, is there a reason that all can't be public? I know I'm assuming I could come here and ask for printed copies, but and you don't have to answer this now, but I just wanted to raise it again.
As a matter of course, like posting the materials
Yeah,
ahead of the meeting.
I think it would be helpful for the public
Yeah.
to just have a copy of your public packet, even if it's marked draft or whatever, just so
Yeah.
that when we do make the effort to come, we could actually comment.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my immediate response is, I think that's a good thing for us to think about. Obviously, there's stuff in here that we probably couldn't include in that, and that means more staff time to sort of figure that out and then, make a separate link or, so yeah, it's a great suggestion though.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Now, Jeff, do you want to make a motion?
Do I need a motion?
No.
I don't
Okay,
think so.
so this will be coming before us again next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, next item is Houston Barn update.
So, the Houston Barn Advisory Committee met and reviewed the numbers, which was going to happen at your last meeting. It turned out that the estimate was actually incorrect, that it was too high, which was good. It's always good when it's too high. So these are now the numbers. And then the other change that has been made is these numbers now include an asphalt shingle roof versus the metal roof, which is a savings of $63,000. I think there's a feeling of some that's fine. There's a feeling of others that it would be much better to have the metal roof. So if there are savings along the way, that could be looked at as we move forward. So basically, with the numbers, with the 84 for the budget from the contractor and the 17,000 for engineering, it comes at 901. We have 875. So there's a deficit of 26,317. Built into the estimate is a $76,000, almost $77,000 contingency. So the hope is that most of that 26 would come from there. There are actually other places we can save, and actually I found out today that the police station roof has come in 13,000 under estimate. So we have some money in the maintenance trust if we have to do that along the way to cover it, to keep that contingency where it is. So the recommendation is to move forward at this point. We're watching very closely as we go and hopefully be within that contingency, but know that we have funds we could fall back on if we absolutely have to.
Is the contingency earmarked for anything in particular?
It is not strictly contingency.
10%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But any project like this,
There's going to be something.
yeah, the contractor is really hesitant to cut that contingency.
Is there a point in the process of the work where leaving the contingency untouched, they're more willing to dip into it? Like substantial completion or?
Yeah, actually, probably the big thing. Because she was there. It's probably the biggest thing could be site work.
Okay.
Because you don't really know what's there. We've done test pits.
Sure.
But really the hope is that we're going to save some money on site work.
Okay.
And they are going to haul the concrete to our pit, which will save money from hauling it further away, and things like that. So
Lump sum, 142,000, that's pretty significant amount of money.
that's pretty significant. So the hope is
It's a relatively small area.
yeah,
Is that the concrete hauling or the site work? The site work.
which does include the concrete hauling. There's a lot of concrete in there that has to come out.
Yeah.
And get hauled away.
Okay.
And there were 3 bids on all of that. And that was all the lowest bids are reflected in here.
The new concrete's 157,000. Should have a bid. $7,000.
It's the new concrete's the whole foundation. So the recommendation is that we proceed. We think we're covered enough to proceed.
Well, certainly what you just gave us for news about the police station roof is good. That covers half of the shortfall.
Right.
And
Well, hopefully we won't be using our I don't really want to be pulling from our maintenance fund if we don't have.
yeah,
to.
no,
We're trying to get that up. The other thing is, Ken, you mentioned it earlier, so I did talk to Greg. We budgeted money for siding and the roof at the rescue building, which may or may not get done this year, so we could, if we had to, you could look at that. So mostly because of timing of the contract.
any questions? Thoughts?
This, I'll vote to proceed with.
I'll make a motion that we proceed as per the recommendation.
Second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on,
Oh, that's a question on the Houston barn. So originally we we still want, most of us want a metal roof because on a.
why don't you come up so if anybody's still on, we'll just still see you this morning.
She's definitely at that.
Hi, Louise Carr, Bertamintville. A lot of us still want the metal roof because long-term for a municipal building and also that sun just pours in on that one side. So they're supposed to last 30 years, but the way that sun pounds on them may not. So we asked the question that, when can we switch? Right now, we have a price for the asphalt, just so we can keep going on the project. But at some point, say we're halfway through, 3/4 of the way through, we really have to say, okay, asphalt or the metal. He's gonna try to get some better numbers on the metal roof also. So if we do have like extras monies, I think like if you don't do the rescue squad building and
Those aren't extra monies, those are monies that are allocated elsewhere.
Yep.
We might be,
well, if things come in less than on some of the projects that you have done, would you want to put that money towards a metal roof?
I would say that is to be decided in the
Yeah.
future.
I would love for the metal roof to be a much more firm possibility right this second.
Yep.
I agree with you that having a metal roof is just way better, but I can't commit to use extra money for that right now because I don't know what else is
Right.
really needed for. And it's,
60.
yeah.
Yeah, so, but you would be open to that, I guess. Basically, I know you can't commit the money because
We don't have it.
you don't have it. But you would be open to it if there's monies that could be found.
Potentially, yeah.
I would,
you
think you're gonna find.
As we would always
Yeah,
do, as this goes on. we'll-
If there was no contingency money spent,
Yep.
I'd have no problem
Yep.
allocating the contingency to the roof.
Oh, yeah,
That'd be
The
amazing.
likelihood of no contingency money being spent, owing the contractor, is zero.
well, and no, yeah, the barn too, and there's a lot of things that, once you get it up in the air, you're gonna see, so. All right, good, thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
Okay, now. Okay, now we'll move on to the rail trail grant approval.
Yes. So we've received the grant to do the trail, basically connecting Houston Field with Kearsarge. We've received the grant, and this is a motion to allow me to sign that and sign everything along the way to keep that moving forward.
Okay, anybody have any objection to this? Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
I will make the motion as stated in our packet.
Okay. Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, you've got the authority there. Okay, and now field use policy update.
Yes, so you have that sent from Paula. It basically talks about it kind of follows up to the conversation of programs being done such that they don't conflict with our existing recreation programs.
Yeah, I view the changes as really giving Paula some more authority. Anybody have any comments, concerns about the update?
I do not. No.
Okay,
Yeah, I thought it looked pretty good.
okay. And then is the next step a motion, Neil?
Yes.
When we updated the recreation, you can second.
No, because that was,
Second?
I'll take it.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, can tell Paula she's got it updated. Okay, with that, we'll turn to new business. Neil?
Before we go to cashier, the waste reduction committee asked me about the cleanup on the slope below the transfer station. Didn't know if it had been scheduled. I assume it has not been scheduled.
It should be scheduled. I don't think it's done.
Okay.
now.
Well, you can let me know when you address that. That was it.
Oh, okay. That was simple. Okay, Neil, do you have any new business?
Yeah.
Okay, do you have any updates?
I do.
Okay,
So since the last meeting, I spent almost every day that week in DS workshops and grants, so that was beneficial. So there are a lot of grants out there. Some of them are partial funding, but so hopefully we can get money for the things we know are coming down the road, but actually they're here. So that's good. This week is school vacation week, so actually a lot of department heads are off, so but it should be a quiet week. It usually is. Town meeting survey is out and has come. It's interesting seeing the results coming in, so we'll have results for your next meeting. It's kind of looked at 40 like it was already all over the place. So you saw, as far as staffing, you signed the full-time police officer to fill. He is certified. We'll start right away to fill our empty position. We do have 2 full-time employees, one in buildings and grounds and one in highway at the highway department. And we're down one of our part-time people at the transfer station. So we are working to fill those, but those are never easy positions to fill. And I guess from there, this is the next couple of weeks look a little quiet, so I'm hoping to get caught up on the things that are not going on my list.
I'll give you lots of energy committee things.
No more things.
Okay, anybody for public forum?
Two quick things. Catherine Mitchell, Boundary Road. My first thing is, I remember years back when I was on the recycling committee and came here before the Board of Selectmen at the time, that everyone used a microphone. And I can tell you, sitting where I do, as I've gotten older, it's hard to hear you, all of the time. And it's hard to hear people who come up here and have their backs to the audience. And I don't know if there's a sort of a general system that could be considered. I know at the time it was an individual mic that was handed, well, there was more than one.
Well, we weren't zooming that.
Hmm?
We weren't zooming that, which is, it's much more complicated when you're doing sound through Zoom and amplifying it here, so.
Well, I don't know if there's a solution, but I will tell you that it can be difficult for those of us who are older, perhaps, and maybe others, to really hear everything. So it would be helpful if we could find a solution to that. And the other thing, and I don't know if this would be a policy or an ordinance that would be required, but I just have a suggestion after trash pickup day the other day. I know a lot of stuff ends up in the river, plastic drink bottles, you know, a lot of different things. And with the various restaurants and stores in town that have food for takeout and beverages for takeout, it seems to me as though there should be a rule that if you allow those things to be sold and taken out, that there should be an outdoor trash can. If you have tables to sit at where you eat, there should be a trash can where people can throw their trash. I have seen things left on some tables, and then they're blown around and end up in the river. So I just wanted to mention that as something to consider as we're getting more restaurants and more outdoor seating and various things, that we consider not letting the trash flow all over the town.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else for public forum? Okay, I'll close out public forum and go to other. Does anybody on the board have?
Yeah, I've got one thing.
Yes, sir.
So the last time we met, there was a conversation around boat launch and planning and a subcommittee and that. I said I was going to talk to the planning board about how they structured their thoughts. Planning board met, we talked about it briefly at the end of it. The planning board is going through their revamp of the open space section of the master plan in April. No, next month, I think, within the next couple of months. And so at that point, that we'll see what all the suggestions are in terms of how we structure all of the open spaces. My hope is in the last master plan, there was a very specific recommendation for the boat launch, or that part in terms of how we should look at developing a plan around it. So my hope is that part of the recommendation for the planning board for the master plan this time also includes something like that. And that could be a good start for developing a plan.
And when the planning board is doing this process, they're getting public input.
They're getting public input. Well, I mean, depends on how many people show up. It's
Sure.
There's, but there's a lot of, there's a consultant that does a lot of work, right? To help develop the master plan. And I think as part of that,
They use regional planning.
And I think there's a lot of survey work that also goes out to help develop some of that. So it's not just the planning board discussing it. They definitely noted that like their planning board's role is definitely not to be detailed about that sort of thing, but hopefully that will give us a starting point.
I'll just say, it's just clear we keep roles clear. The planning board does overall planning, so they talk about there being a park there. It is not their role or responsibility to say what's there. That's the select board's role and responsibility.
Yeah, and that was very much their note. Not like their big takeaway was this is not our responsibility.
We've got a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anything else for other? Okay, we don't have any non-public session, correct? Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.